Buy a new Range Rover, and in 5 years it hands back about $70,000. Not in a crash, just in the driving. That is the money pit, and it runs through every Land Rover the brand sells. 7 models ranked here by one number, how much of its price each one keeps after 5 years. 6 of them sink you, one quietly does not. Level 1 is the deepest. Level 1, the Range Rover, and to be precise, not the Land Rover brand and not the whole Range Rover subfamily. This is the full-size flagship that carries the name, the one they trim up into autobiography and SV. 5 years in, it keeps just 38% of its price. Put that in dollars, $110,000 new and about $42,000 when you go to sell. And the market is not guessing. In the American surveys, the full-size Range Rover sits near the bottom of its class. RepairPal scores it 2 out of 5, 15th of 19 luxury full-size SUVs. That is the calm year. The number that empties accounts is the AIR suspension, the system that lets 3 tons float. When it goes, a full replacement runs near $7,000, and even a single corner is over $1,500. The buyer of a 5-year-old Range Rover has read every one of those stories, so he offers you 38 cents on the dollar. You are not being punished for the badge. You are prepaying his repair bill. So if you must own one, never buy it new. Buy it at 4 or 5 years old, after someone else ate the drop, and only with a warranty you can actually claim on. Own the Range Rover. Do not own its repair bill. And hold one number. A Land Rover on this list keeps 54 cents on the dollar. You meet it at level 7. Level 2, the Range Rover Sport. It keeps 42%, a few points better than the full-size car, and it rides on the very same air suspension, so the repair you just met carries straight over. Here is the honest part, both ways. In the American surveys, the Sport scores a notch better than the flagship. RepairPal puts it mid-pack for its class instead of dead last. And one long-running British survey rates the older, pre-2022 Sport the most dependable Land Rover you can buy. But do not read better than the worst is good. Consumer Reports still expects a new one to be less reliable than the average new car, and that air suspension can still hand you a $4,000 bill on its own. What both surveys quietly agree on is the useful part. The simpler, older Sport, the one before the plug-in hybrid battery and the layered electronics, holds up better than the newest, most loaded version. So the move is counterintuitive. Do not chase the newest Sport. Buy the older, simpler generation the badge snobs overlook. Fewer systems, fewer things to fail, and the steepest drop is already behind you. Level 2 was still a Range Rover. Level 3 is a different family entirely. The Land Rover Discovery. Not a Range Rover, not a Defender, its own line. The big, boxy, 7-seat family hauler. It keeps 42%, and in the British survey, it is one of the least dependable in the whole range. Owners flag the 12-volt battery and the air conditioning, and it carries the same self-leveling air suspension on a heavier body doing more work. On a spreadsheet, the repair frequency looks tame. In a driveway, a Discovery that sits for a week, drains its battery, and settles onto its bump stops is a very expensive school run. And the smart exit here is not a trim or a model year. It is patience. Because there is a Land Rover further up this list that does the exact same job, seats just as many, and keeps far more of its money. Do not sign for this one until you have met it. Level 4, the Range Rover Velar. 44% kept, and the Velar's problem is not under the hood, it is on the dashboard. The Velar sold itself on design. Flush door handles, 2 stacked touchscreens, minimalism as a luxury feature. But electronics age faster than engines, and a 5-year-old interface that lags, freezes, or drops a display reads as broken to the next buyer, even when the mechanicals are fine. Owners flag the infotainment and the bodywork. Engine faults sit around 8% in the survey. The Velar depreciates on fashion, not failure. So treat it like fashion. This is the one Land Rover to lease or to buy used and keep short, because the thing that dates it, the technology, is the one thing you cannot refresh. And that same aging electronics problem is about to turn from annoying into something the whole market fears, because the next 2 cars share this one's engine. Never buy a screen-led car for the long haul. That is the last of the flagships. From here, the retention numbers get better, which makes the reputation underneath them so much crueler. Level 5. The Discovery Sport. It keeps 46%, better than every flagship above it, and yet it is the least dependable Land Rover in the British survey. Blame the engine that made the whole family nervous. The 2-liter Ingenium shared with the Velar and the Evoque. It earned a nightmare reputation for timing chains that stretch early and at their worst let the pistons meet the valves. A repair that runs from $4,500 to over $10,000. Now the honesty, because this matters. That was mostly the diesel versions, mostly built before 2019. The American cars are petrol and newer, so the odds are far better than the horror stories suggest. But reputation is sticky. The used market discounts the entire nameplate for a fear most of these cars will never live out, and that is precisely why it is cheap to get into. So the exit is simple. Buy it with a full service history, change the oil more often than the book says, and you are buying other people's fear at a discount. The cheapest Land Rover to enter, priced by its worst rumor. Level 6. The Range Rover Evoque. It keeps 49%, second best in the whole family, and it is the cheapest honest way into a Range Rover badge. It shares the Discovery Sport's bones in that same Ingenium engine, but it wears them better. Unlike the 2 cars before it, RepairPal has enough data to actually rate the Evoque and gives it 3 out of 5, around $1,100 a year, the best score of any Land Rover on this list. And the American Evoque is petrol, so it starts on the safer side of that engine's reputation to begin with. Buy one with a full service history and you get most of a Range Rover's presence for half the flagship's depreciation and none of its air suspension bill. The Evoque is the first car here where the badge and the math finally agree. The sensible Range Rover, which is almost a contradiction in terms. But it is still not the one I told you to hold. Level 7. The Land Rover Defender. And to be clear, the new one. The truck Land Rover relaunched in 2020. Not the old boxy farm and safari legend that ended in 2016. It keeps 54%, the best of any Land Rover, and it is the answer to the number I told you to hold. Now, why does it escape the money pit? Not because it is simple, it is not. It is a thoroughly modern Land Rover with all the electronics and on many trims the very same air suspension as the others. It holds its value for a plainer reason. People actually want it. It trades on the old Defender's go-anywhere legend. It is genuinely capable and genuinely roomy, and that demand is what keeps its resale high 5 years on. And on running costs so far, it is the cheapest Land Rover to keep. RepairPal estimates about $675 a year for the 2-door 90, around $900 for the 4-door 110, close to a mainstream SUV. And CarEdge still projects it to cost less over 10 years than the Range Rover, not more. Now the honesty, because this is a Land Rover and it is the newest car here, so its long-term record is barely written. Roughly 22% of owners reported a problem in the early years. Mostly the infotainment and the engine, plus a run of windshields that crack on their own. Almost all of it was fixed for free, under warranty, and none of it is the 5-figure air suspension roulette that scares buyers off the flagship. So the exit is the car itself, bought with your eyes open. Pick the simpler trim, live through the early software updates, and you own the one Land Rover the market actually rewards you for keeping. The one the brand treats as least premium is the one that respects your money. Line up all 7, and the pattern has almost nothing to do with how good the car is. The 2 you pay the most for, the Range Rover and its Sport, keep the least because most of that price is prestige. And prestige evaporates the second you drive it off the lot. The one that keeps the most, the Defender, is not the most reliable and it is not the simplest. It is the most wanted. Prestige depreciates, desire holds, and underneath every one of them sits the same floor, the repair bill and the reputation, air suspension on the big ones, an engine that scared a decade of buyers on the small ones, and Land Rover's own record over all of it. That is the money pit. The depreciation was never the disease, it is just the sound the repair bill makes on the way down. 3 honest caveats because a ranking is only as good as its sources. 1. Retention is a single source and a single method. iSeeCars, which models 5-year value retention across millions of listings against the inflation-adjusted sticker. A market projection, not a promise about your exact car. 2. The reliability surveys disagree by design. The American ones are harder on these cars. A British one is kinder to the older Sport. I gave you both because quoting only the worst score would be lying by selection. And the scariest Land Rover failures, the diesel's timing chain and the early petrol's turbo, were mostly pre-2019 problems the company tightened up afterward. So the 2020 and newer American cars sit on the better side of both. 3. The Defender is the newest car here, so $675 a year is an early number, not a lifetime one. The pattern that survives all three. You are not paying for reliability, you are paying for prestige or for desire, and only one of those comes back. Averages are not your car. Spec, mileage, and history move all of it. That is the ladder. 7 Land Rovers, the entire lineup, and one number that told the truth the badge would not. Subscribe, and before you sign for any luxury car, we will tell you what it really costs after the showroom, when the repair bill and the resale value finally send their invoice.